Hi, Movie Explained here. Today, I'm going to explain an action-adventure movie called The Count of Monte Cristo. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie starts in 1814 as some crew members of a French merchant ship sail towards the island of Elba. The ship's first mate, Philippe Danglars, is against this idea, but the captain is slipped into a coma and requires urgent medical help. Elba is the very island where the French General Napoleon Bonaparte has currently been exiled to. British troops patrol the island 24/7 and shoot anyone who comes anywhere near it. Despite this obvious threat, the ship's second mate, Edmond Dantes, and the shipping company's representative, Fernand Mondego, arrive at the island's shore. The latter is not very keen on this idea, but Edmond is desperate to help his captain. The duo are soon greeted by hostile English soldiers who fire several warning shots. But before things can get worse, Napoleon himself arrives at the beach. He uses his influence to save Edmond and Fernand from the soldiers and offers medical assistance for their captain. Later that night, Napoleon calls Edmond alone for a private chat. The general is impressed by his loyalty towards the ship's captain and asks for a favor. He hands the sailor a letter that is to be delivered to someone named Monsieur Clarion. In fact, the general claims that Monsieur Clarion will show up and collect this letter by himself. Napoleon also makes Edmond swear that he will not reveal about the letter to anyone, not even his close friend. Unbeknownst to them, Fernand is secretly watching their meeting. The very next day, the crew members are forced to leave the island because their captain passes away. They return to Marseille, where the shipping company's headquarters are located. Their boss, Morel, is briefed about the whole voyage and the dangerous detour to Elba. Morel is thoroughly impressed by Edmonds and promotes him to captain of the ship, but this enrages Philippe as he was the second in command, and he ends up quitting his job. Following this, Edmond meets his girlfriend Mercedes at a seaside castle and reveals the news. The year is 1814, but his girlfriend has the name of a 2024 stripper, and Edmond wants to marry her but doesn't have a lot of money or a fancy wedding ring. To his delight, she makes a ring out of a thread and puts it on as a sign of their true love. However, Fernand, who is also present at the scene, doesn't look as enthusiastic about this whole situation. Envious of his friend's good fortune, Fernand gets drunk and spills the beans about the letter to Philippe. This could implicate the poor Edmond in charges of treason according to the laws of the French government. The scene shifts as Edmond is having dinner with Mercedes and her father. They are all excited about the news of him being promoted to captain of a merchant ship. Their happiness, however, is quickly snatched away when the king's soldiers show up. They arrest Edmond and take him to the city's chief magistrate, J.F. Villefort. The magistrate knows about the letter from Napoleon and asks the suspect about it. In response, the illiterate Edmond reveals he still has the letter but doesn't know what's in it. He hands it to the magistrate, who reads it and realizes it contains data about the English soldiers' positions around Elba. This information could possibly aid Napoleon to escape and return to mainland France. The situation takes a sinister turn when Villefort inquires who the letter was intended. Edmond honestly names Monsieur Clarion, but points out that he has no idea who that is. Unbeknownst to the sailor, Clarion is none other than Villefort's own father, a staunch supporter of the old regime. The magistrate, who had renounced his father to secure a prestigious position in post-Bonaparte France, is horrified by the revelation. Villefort burns the letter immediately and asks Edmond if he told anyone about it. When the poor guy says he hasn't, Villefort gets him arrested. Fortunately, Edmond manages to escape and returns to his dearest friend Fernand, but the latter reveals that he saw Edmond with the letter and read it while he was asleep. In a shocking twist, Fernand betrays his friend and hands him over to the authorities. Shortly afterwards, Edmond is taken to an infamous prison called Château d'If, which is located on an island. This prison is super dangerous, and nobody has ever escaped from it. Edmond is then presented in front of the prison's sadistic warden, who tortures him brutally till he is unconscious. After the beating, Edmond is thrown in a cell with a small window that barely lets in any light. There's also a wooden door that opens only once a year, and the food is so bad that even dogs wouldn't eat it. He's all alone with nobody to talk to and cannot ever leave the cell. 6 years pass by, and Edmond endures pain and suffering every day. He starts losing faith in God and even tries to hang himself, but he cannot bring himself to do so. The warden appears every new year and beats Edmond, and this is what every prisoner suffers in this brutal prison. One day, a hopeless Edmond is lying in his cell, when a miracle happens. He hears a strange sound coming from the floor, and soon, an old man pops up out of a hole. He introduces himself as Sharia, a prisoner who has been in the Château d'If for the last 11 years. He could also potentially be a really messed up hallucination. Apparently, he has been digging an escape tunnel. But upon seeing that he is in Edmund's cell, he realizes he dug in the wrong direction. Despite this misfortune, the old man plans to dig another tunnel for 8 more years and even asks Edmund to join him. Harrier offers to teach him a wide array of academic and martial disciplines in return. Edmund, who has all the time in the world and nothing else to do, agrees to the offer. As the years continue to pass by, Edmund spends most of his time in Harrier's cell, soaking up every bit of knowledge that the old man will give. In order to avoid the prison guards, he goes through the tunnel to his cell twice. Once, when the guards come to deliver food, and the second time when they come to collect the waste bucket. Both of them keep digging the tunnel together and put the soil in the waste bucket. They are well aware that the guards would never check that bucket out of disgust, unless one of those guards is Adam Sandler, who has always had a weird thing for shit. One day, during a conversation, Edmund his story to Harrier. He reveals how the magistrate had initially acquitted him of all charges, only to arrest him later. He also recalls how the magistrate had burnt the letter when he realized it was addressed to someone named Monsieur Clarion. The old man suggests that there must be a hidden motive behind the magistrate's decision to destroy such important evidence of treason. As Edmund ponders over Harrier's remark, he begins to piece together the puzzle. It dawns on him that Monsieur Clarion must have been the magistrate's own father, who was once a colonel in Napoleon's army. Everything starts to make sense now, and the old man commends Edmund's growing understanding of the complex world of people screwing each other for personal gain, aka politics. After a few more years, their tunnel finally reaches the outer boundaries of the prison near a tree's roots. They now only have to dig upwards for another month to complete it. But while doing so, a tragic accident occurs. The ground overhead caves in and falls over Harrier. Edmund barely manages to save him, but the old man is fatally injured. Before taking his last breath, Harrier tells his pupil about the infamous treasure that once belonged to his employers, the wealthy Spada family. He reveals that the vast wealth is still buried in an island called Monte Cristo off the coast of Italy. The old man then hands Edmund the map and urges him to use the treasure for the benefit of the poor people. In the aftermath of this tragedy, Edmund drags Harrier's corpse back to the cell while hiding himself in the tunnel. The guards soon arrive and are shocked to see the lifeless body there. They assume the old man died of natural causes, so they wrap his body in a shroud and go to inform the warden. The group then arrives sometime later and eventually decides to dispose of the corpse into the sea. In the next scene, the guards take the shrouded body outside. But as they prepare to count to 3, something astonishing happens. A hand comes out from the dead body and grabs the key hanging on the warden's waist. Both the dead body and the warden then fall into the sea, and it turns out Edmund was the one behind it. He had hidden the old man's body in his cell and cleverly took his place inside the shroud. Once they are inside the water, Edmund breaks free from his chains and quickly ties up the warden. The latter desperately tries to save himself, but Edmund ensures he meets his demise in the sea. The newly freed prisoner then swims to the closest island and is overwhelmed with joy at finally attaining freedom after years of captivity. A few weeks later, Edmund makes it to Marseille and visits Mr. Morel, the owner of his old shipping company. Edmund, who now looks completely different due to his long imprisonment, makes up a fake story about his identity. He introduces himself as one of Edmund's friends and asks about his family. Mr. Morel sadly reveals that Edmund's father had taken his own life after his son had been accused of treason. He explains that it was the then magistrate who had put such charges on Edmund. In return, the magistrate got promoted to chief prosecutor in Paris. Mr. Morel also mentions that someone had killed the magistrate's father. As if that wasn't enough, Edmund is devastated to learn that his girlfriend, Mercedes, married Fernand and shifted to Paris. Fueled by a sharp desire for revenge, our hero decides to go to Monte Cristo Island. He hires a handyman, and together, they head to the island using Harrier's map. After several days and nights of searching, the duo finally manages to find the treasure, which was expertly hidden in a cave. It is a massive collection of gold coins and boxes of jewels that seem endless. They haul as much treasure as they can and then head to Paris. I will buy Fernand a stripper named Mercedes so I can have mine back. As the months pass by, Edmund establishes himself among the elites of Paris as the Count of Monte Cristo. He buys an extremely luxurious property in the heart of the city and regularly throws lavish parties. He invites all the influential families in the Mondigos, while everyone else attended these parties. His old friend and ex-girlfriend never visit. Edmund soon finds out that the Mondigos are in huge debt due to Fernand's gambling habits. So, He instructs his men to buy the largest bank in Paris, and then convinces all the shipping companies to stop doing business with the Mondigos. A few weeks later, the Count of Monte Cristo learns that Fernando and Mercedes have a son named Albert. He is extremely hurt by the revelation, but decides to use this opportunity to his advantage. He orders his men to stage Albert's kidnapping, and then rescues the kid's life himself. When Albert returns home, he reveals that the Count of Monte Cristo had saved him. With this act, Edmond manages to gain the trust of the Mondigo family. Following the incident, Fernando decides to throw a party to celebrate his son's birthday and invites everyone, including the Count of Monte Cristo. The latter attends the party, and no one recognizes him because he now appears extremely rich and regal. However, Mercedes, who is also present at the party, recognizes Edmond from his small habits like absent-mindedly twirling his hair. It is obvious that she is still in love with him and even confronts him. However, the Count of Monte Cristo insists that Edmond Dantes is dead and then leaves the party. He doesn't realize the woman had never mentioned Edmond's full name, which was known by very few people. Later on in the week, Edmond comes up with yet another plan. This time, he talks to the magistrate and deliberately lets slip that he had located the treasure of Sparda and is shipping it through Marseille. The magistrate, who is known for his dishonesty, shares the information with Fernando and Philippe. Unbeknownst to these thugs, Edmond knows that they would try to deceive each other just as he anticipated. When the shipment containing the treasure arrives, Philippe betrays everyone and tries to take the majority of the treasure for himself. But he is soon confronted by Edmond, who swiftly arrives with the police. Philippe is then arrested on the charge of stealing the treasure and thrown into jail. Sometime later, Edmond confronts Villefort in a public steam bath. He questions why the magistrate had lied to Mercedes many years ago, claiming that Edmond had been hanged. The magistrate is bewildered by how Monte Cristo knows about this. Nonetheless, he arrogantly confesses that he persuaded Fernando to kill his father. In return, he told Mercedes that her lover was executed, essentially forcing her to marry Fernando. The magistrate also believes that no one could ever prove his crime. Unbeknownst to him, Monte Cristo had planned all of this, and there are several police officers behind the curtain in the bath. The magistrate is then arrested for conspiring to kill his father and thrown into jail. In the next scene, Mercedes arrives at Monte Cristo's house and reveals that she knows he's Edmond. She questions how he knew that Edmond Dantes was dead, as his surname was not widely known. Despite his burning desire for revenge, Edmond finally admits his real identity and asks Mercedes why she didn't wait for him. She explains her side of the story and shows him the thread ring that he had given her years ago. This makes our hero emotional, and he eventually ends up making love to her. He even puts the thread ring on his penis just to show that it's for real. The following day, Mercedes confronts her husband and reveals a shocking truth. Albert is Edmond's son. She had only married Fernando and claimed that the boy was born prematurely to cover up his true paternity. Upon hearing this, Fernando leaves in a fit of rage and eventually reaches a hiding place where he planned to hide Monte Cristo's treasure after stealing it. However, he is greeted by Edmond, who now openly declares his real identity. Fernando is stunned to see his old friend standing before him, but quickly launches an attack with a sword. However, Edmond, who had practiced fencing daily for several years in prison, easily deflects the attacks. He is about to kill his traitor friend when suddenly Albert arrives and steps in the middle. The kid is quickly followed by Mercedes, who finally reveals his true parentage out loud. Realizing that he doesn't want to live in a world where Edmond has everything and he has nothing, Fernando launches yet another attack. They engage in a fierce duel, which ends with Edmond putting his sword through his opponent's heart. The scene shifts to 3 months later as Edmond returns to the Chateau Thief to pay homage to his old mentor. He had purchased the prison to ensure that no prisoner will ever be subjected to the same torturous conditions that he endured. Forget the fact that most prisoners probably deserve it. Edmond is now dedicated to using his treasure for the betterment of humanity, as Sharia had advised him to do before passing away. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.